As its transformation coach, Charles D'Angelo. Welcome to my home office. I wanted to take some time on the break I've had here and just discuss with you what steps you can take to start to take your life to a whole new level. So many people come to my office every single day in hopes of transforming the way they feel. Most people that come to see me are looking to change one of two things. In fact, it's pretty much one thing. They want to change how they feel. They're tired of feeling stuck. They're tired of feeling unfulfilled. They're tired of not having energy. And so we have to kind of unpack what's going on with them. So many people think that the work with me is all about food, when in fact, very little of the conversation is about the specifics of food. It's all about changing your mindset so that you can start to be motivated and consistent in doing what you know you ought to be doing. So you have to ask yourself first, where are you? You need to be honest with yourself and answer that question. Are you at a place that you're really happy with? If the answer to that is no, then you need to ask yourself, what about where you are is troubling you? And that's not an easy question to answer for many people. Often it'll bring up a lot of pain because many of us don't want to face the reality that we're in a place that we're unhappy with, and it's a function of our own choice, our own making. I'm not at all minimizing the reality that things happen that are tragic to each of us. I mean, I was 360 pounds. So if you don't know my story, I grew up, I was bullied, I was teased, I was made fun of. I was always different from most young guys my age. I didn't have interest in the typical, shall we say, masculine, the masculine interest. I wasn't an athlete growing up. I wasn't someone who was particularly drawn to doing things that were physical in nature. I was much more oriented toward academics, towards music, towards literature. All those things were far more interesting to me. And so because of that difference, I stuck out. And children tend to define different as sometimes not good. And I was bullied. And because of that bullying, I picked up a lot of limiting beliefs, things that caused me to doubt myself at that very formative stage of life. And not until I hit a tipping point as an adolescent where I recognized that if I wanted my life to be better, I was going to have to be better. I was going to have to change if I wanted things to change. Not until then did things really start to improve. So you've got to look at your life and recognize that what happens to you happens to me, happens to the next person. Sometimes it's more difficult, sometimes it's less difficult, sometimes it's tragic, sometimes there are opportunities, sometimes there are difficulties. I mean, life happens to each of us. We can't let what happens to us define the direction that we are going to move into. We have to make a decision that we're going to take responsibility for our choices, and that comes from admitting to yourself first and foremost where you really are. If you won't admit to yourself where you really are, I don't think you're going to ever be able to close the gap between here and where you're going. So it's all about getting honest with yourself first, and having the courage to look at the parts of yourself that perhaps are the most fear-inducing. Often people run from the things that bring up fear, when in fact the greatest strength that you'll discover about yourself is something that comes about from looking at the thing you're afraid of and recognizing it's not as big as you think it is. So maybe you have 30, 40, 50, 100 pounds to lose. Maybe it's a physical issue that you really want to master and you really want to take charge of. If that's the case, what you've got to really start to do is, and I'm glad to see we have some interaction here. This is my first Facebook Live on the screen, so pardon me getting distracted, but what you've got to do is you've got to look at where you are and recognize that in this place of being dissatisfied, it's from that place you can start to really craft a strategy to move in a direction you really deserve your life to move in. And if it's a physical issue, then there are some very practical things you can begin to do. I mean, all of us know what we ought to be doing in terms of good habits with regard to consumption, but it's sticking with those habits in the face of high emotion that many people kind of get off track and lose their way. So the work that I do with clients is discovering the power they have within themselves to stay consistent in the face of things that are difficult. And one real easy way to discover your power to do that is have a schedule. So if you have a goal in mind, knowing where you are and you know where you want to go, have a schedule and have a plan of action that you're actually beginning to be, shall we say, mindful with every single day. You're actually being cognizant of it. You're not allowing yourself to make excuses because of situations or feelings. And that might sound harsh, but it's necessary. You've got to be direct with yourself. You've got to learn to be your own best friend and your own best coach. And a coach, a good one, is going to tell you what you need to hear, even if you don't want to hear it. So sometimes you have to learn how to install that into yourself. For many clients, there's a lot of history in the way. There's a lot of pain. Perhaps they're not in a good mental state in terms of feeling good about themselves to begin to take action. So if you find yourself having done something well for a while and then sabotaging your efforts, it's often helpful to kind of ground yourself in a really good relationship with someone else. That's where coaching comes in. Having someone to loop back with to help you come back to your centeredness, come back to that place of clarity where you know what you're about, you know you have the power to break through, and someone's going to help guide you. They're not going to carry you, but they'll guide you on the way to the goals that you've set for yourself. That's incredibly helpful. But if you don't have access to someone like that, you can start to develop the skills within yourself. And it starts with really being loving of yourself. A good coach is someone who really loves their client. And by that, I mean they pay attention to their client. They're accepting of their client. And when I say accepting of their client, doesn't mean accepting of the behaviors which are self-sabotaging or self-critical. Part of loving yourself is making the distinction between who you are and what you do. You're not your behaviors. You might very well be up to some very, very malevolent things in your life. You might be doing things to yourself. You might be doing things to other people that aren't at all aligned with who you really are. And part of self-awareness is being able to make that distinction between who you are and what you do, and recognizing there is a difference. There is a difference between who we are and what we do. We all have a myriad of facets to our personality. None of us are just one way. I see all of us kind of falling on a spectrum in a lot of different ways. We all can be very introverted. We all can be very extroverted at times. Most of us have a place that we call home. And you want to get to a place where the physical state you're in is no longer a hindrance to the work of self-discovery, of really getting to know yourself. A lot of the people, many of the people that I work with, their major hang-up is allowing themselves to be vulnerable with other people. So it's not about the food. And perhaps it's not a physical issue that has you watching this right now. Maybe you're not happy with the relationship you're in. Maybe you're staying in a relationship simply because it's comfortable, it's familiar. Maybe you're coming up with all sorts of reasons and excuses like, well, it's best for the kids. And I'm not saying it's not, but I am saying that in order for you to get to where you want to be, you're going to have to be honest with yourself by admitting where you are. So step one of any transformation is to admit to yourself where you really are. See yourself for where you are and take responsibility for that. You've got to recognize where you are isn't a function of solely what's happened to you. Yes, some very bad and very sad things may have happened, but by no means do those things have to continue to define your life and ultimately write the book that people think about when they think about your life. Your choices will ultimately write the next chapter. So start with where you are by looking at it straight on, head on, squarely, and objectively. Try to disassociate the emotions you have about where you are and not judge it. Come at it from a place of witnessing where you are. Come at it from a place of, to kind of repeat, to just observe it. I mean, look at where you are and be honest with yourself. Am I happy with this? Am I really living life in a way that seems consistent with the vision that I've had for myself? Or is it consistent with the vision other people have had for me? Am I living in a way that's more aligned with what my parents or other people that were authorities when I was growing up kind of programmed me to think my life should be like? And this could go to the deepest of core issues. It could be relationally. Are you married because that's what you thought you ought to do? Are you in a career because that's what all the people in your family have always done? Have you really made space to unpack and sort out who you are and what an ideal life looks like for you? People come to me with the intention of losing weight. And I do help people obviously lose the physical weight, but I think the physical is a the physical loss is a manifestation of the losing the chains of one's past, kind of letting go of the past, letting go of the things that are holding us back. And the biggest hang up for so many people that I work with is fear. Will I be able to handle discovering who I really am? And will I be able to handle other people's response or reaction to me sharing myself with them? Let's face it, it's difficult and it's scary, particularly in today's society, to just put yourself out there and be yourself and not concern yourself with the good or bad opinion of other people. Much of the work a person has to do working with me is spiritual in nature. It's coming to a place where they love themselves enough to recognize that they're not going to live each day based upon whether or not they hit the mark in another person's opinion. And what's really kind of awe-inspiring about that is when you become independent of other people's opinions, it tends to be the case, other people's opinions of you are pretty good because people really respect a person who's living congruently with themselves, who's consistent with who they are, who's living authentically. We could put it that way. And so you want to try to be the most authentic version of yourself. I know this is getting very deep, but it's a subject I care very much about because the physical weight that a person needs to lose, again, is more or less a reflection of almost the disorderliness around the relationship they have with themselves. So we want to get the relationship we have with ourselves in order so that we have a better relationship with the things that we need to use to fuel ourselves. When we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, when we don't turn to ourselves when we're afraid or when we're sad or when we're angry or when we're happy, we tend to look for some way to connect with ourselves. And our culture, our society has come up with a lot of ways to trick us into thinking that turning to a substance like food or alcohol or some type of activity that's not really an investment in your future is going to give you the feeling that a real healthy relationship with yourself and with other people ultimately can only give you. One way to know that you're going down the wrong path is when you're doing something over and over and over again and you're unable to get enough of it. That's telling you you didn't need it in the first place. So what you want to do is you want to recognize that that type of immediate gratification that the person gets from that, usually what comes quickly goes quickly. And so you want to recognize whether or not the decisions you're making now are investments in your future or they're withdrawals from your future. If they're withdrawals, obviously your emotional, relational, and physical bank account is going to be running the red all the time. So start to consider what the choices are that you're making every day, having admitted to yourself where you really are. Second, you want to have a vision of where you want to go. And this is where it gets exciting because so many people don't have goals. They don't have an idea of where they want to be. They know they're unhappy with where they are. They know that they could be different, but they aren't really sure of what life will look like on the other side. And after all, they spend a lot of time with people that are plagued by the same limiting beliefs that they themselves are plagued by. So this is going to open up a whole nother topic, but you want to be sure you're spending time around the people that are living life in a way that you like to work toward. It doesn't mean being arrogant. It doesn't mean being grandiose. It means making certain that you're spending time with people that live their life in a virtuous, wholesome way, that model for you the types of behaviors that you're working on developing. So in other words, if you're the smartest, the healthiest, the most financially successful in the room, I would suggest going into a new room. You want to be putting yourself in environments that are fostering your growth, that are helping you develop yourself beyond your current situation. Once we get satiated as humans, we tend to look for something. We tend to look for more. You want to be very careful not to get overly attached and to predicate your happiness or your joy on further achievement. That's a trap. The spiritual work I'm talking about is being content with yourself and maintaining a healthy level of ambition while being pleased with where you are, who you are, what you have. So it's a practice of gratitude and a consistent, never-ending, and pardon me for, I'm trying to pull this from the catacombs of my mind. I've never quite put words to it. A constant and never-ending progressive movement forward of ambition. So it's being very happy and grateful and joyful for all that you have, while maintaining an attitude, that would be a better way of saying it, an attitude of ambition towards the things that you want to achieve. And you want to make sure that the things, this vision you're creating for your life forward, is something that's not only going to bring you pleasure, fulfillment, happiness, joy, contentment, a sense of well-being, and something that actually is nourishing on all levels, physical, spiritual, emotional, relational, but it's also nourishing on all those levels to the people that matter most to you. You see, we only can become so happy doing things that we get lit up by. I know from my own experience, not until I found a partner, my wife, who is excited, is as excited as I am by the things that excite me. Dude, I really realize the magnificence of what life has to offer, because life is all about relationships that enhance your experience. If it weren't, everyone would just stay at home. Why would anyone go to a sporting event? I mean, this year in St. Louis, the Stanley Cup is a great example. If you could have the best seat in the house by staying home, which obviously many people can with the massive television screens that now are far more affordable than they once were, why was there such a shortage on tickets? The reason for that is because we get joy by being around other people that are excited about something that we're excited about. That's something that elevates us, that brings us up. So you have to recognize that by working on developing this relationship with yourself, learn how to really love yourself by being attentive to yourself, accepting, appreciative, so on and so forth. You're also, by installing those programs, so to speak, in yourself, you're then going to have access to be that same way with the people that you want to connect with. So no longer are you pursuing relationships that are healthy. You're practicing a healthy relationship with yourself, thereby making it something that's much more likely to happen when you do come into contact with other people that you deem safe, people that have room for you to be yourself, that have room for you to be vulnerable, that have room for what real intimacy between humans looks like. And the best and most straightforward way of doing that is, as I said in step one, is admitting where you are and being honest with that. That means admitting that you don't know everything, admitting that there are areas of your life, like all of us, you're working on becoming more clear. You're working on having more clarity, is another way of saying that. You're working on deepening yourself in a multitude of ways. When you're willing to address the relationships you have with other people, regardless of the gender of the person you're in relationship with, in that way, it gives that other person the permission to do the same. And if you want real, deep, meaningful relationships, it means you're going to have to take the risk of being hurt. Having a good relationship with yourself is going to make it a lot less likely you select people in your life to share yourself with that are going to intentionally wound you. I'm not saying that sometimes people won't slip through the cracks, but I would say the rule of thumb is going to be that you're going to be pretty good at selecting people that are actually healthy. And when you have those healthy relationships, it's going to make it that much easier to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This is vision you're creating. So back to the vision that we're wanting to create. You want to have goals that are compelling. You want to have reasons behind these goals, as I said, that aren't only going to enhance your experience of life, but are going to enhance the experience of life of those that matter most to you. Because most of us will do more for other people than we'll do for ourselves. I hear it every day in my office. So many clients come in, people that are hoping to become clients, and they'll tell me they're in my office because their spouse is crying every night, afraid that they're not going to wake up the next morning to be there with them because they're morbidly overweight. Or they're there because they want to see their children grow up. So often, a huge driving force in human change is what the change is going to mean in the lives of those that we care most about. And so it's not mutually exclusive. It's not as if people only are motivated to please other people. There are some people that are that way. I think most of us are dually motivated or multi-motivated. There are many factors that are contributing to our motivations to take any action or not take an action. So know that about yourself. You have to come up with strong reasons because it is not always going to be easy. It can be very simple. My program, my coaching program is a very simple program. It's a very simple approach to transformation, but it doesn't mean it's easy. As I said, if you're spending time with people that are always looking at life through a lens of the glass is half full, they're looking at life as something that they've got the short end of the stick on, and I don't think it's necessarily because perhaps they're not financially well off. Most people that become bitter or cynical about life feel that they haven't even had a chance to play in the game of life. And I speak from experience, having grown up in a family of modest means. My family was, certainly we weren't in poverty, but we were very blue collar. Neither my mother or father went to university, went to college. I was very fortunate to be the first from my family to graduate from a four-year university, St. Louis University. But education was a luxury in my family. I'm so fortunate that my parents programmed and kind of installed in me the need for personal education as well as formal education. So you want to make sure that the people you're around are people that are looking at life as an opportunity rather than something that is unfairly set up against them. And there's times you're going to go through life where you feel like life is against you, where something bumps into you and you can't, in that moment, find a meaning that quite fits. And that's when people, particularly people that are prone to becoming depressed or overly anxious, it really upsets them because it's as if the blueprint they had for how life should go isn't how reality actually is. And so you always want to be looking at life as something that's giving you an opportunity to learn and grow from. So it's not something that you have to, the frame I use when I look at life is it's not something that you have to try to win at. It's something that you want to look at winning is a function of your ability to learn from everything that happens to you. That would be what I would call a winning strategy to life, because there are going to be things that neither you nor I can predict. I mean, unbelievably difficult things, tragedies, and I hear about a lot of them in my office every day. And our task is to try to find a meaning in those tragic situations that allows us to bring more of ourselves to the world. And if we can do that through whatever suffering we happen to experience, I think the world is often better for it. But that is really a very difficult and noble task for any of us to undertake. But one, if you'll undertake, I think you'll find is a much better alternative to feeling like life's set up against you. So back to these reasons, right? You have to have strong reasons, but you have to understand that just because you have reasons, just because you have a blueprint, doesn't mean that you're going to be making linear progress towards the aims that you've defined for yourself. There are going to be many, many times where you overshoot or you fall a little short. The trend should always be moving towards whatever the aims are you've had, but it's not going to be in a straight line. So if you can know that now, it's going to make going through this journey much easier. It's kind of like if you have a map, you can kind of see ahead if you have an iPhone or something, and you see on your GPS that when you get to this mile marker, that traffic's really slow, you kind of can anticipate that. And because you anticipate it, it doesn't destabilize you emotionally. That's what we want to work towards. We want to have such clear, compelling goals with such strong reasons that even when we encounter adversity, we're able to persevere and stay consistent despite whatever storm might have come up. And there are going to be storms. A great teacher once said, life is like the seasons. So we know that life, just like the weather, has storms. There's a spring, there's a summer, there's a fall, there's a winter. None of us can escape those things in life. So you want to learn how to work with those things rather than work against those things. So rather than spend your time asking, why is this happening, or how could this happen to me, you want to ask yourself, with this being the case, with this being the way things are, how do I want to continue to move forward towards what my aims are? And again, as trivial as it might sound, you need to be reviewing those aims all the time, because with our society today, it's ever more easy to get distracted. It is so easy with our phones pinging at us, with an Apple Watch that's drawing our attention, with responsibilities to our family, to our spouses, to our career, to our calling, our vocation. It's very easy to get derailed. So you have to have kind of a ritual. Why do New Year's resolutions not work? Because people don't have habits to support whatever that resolution is. Telling yourself you want to lose 100 pounds sounds great. But the trouble is, as soon as you encounter resistance in any number of ways, which is going to happen in anyone's journey, you're bound to fall back to default. And if your default hasn't been buffered, or you haven't created something that keeps you from falling back to what you've always fallen back to, kind of your, like I said, your internal thermostat of habit, you're going to find yourself reinforcing that old story of, you see, I really can't stick to anything, I'm a failure, and all that negative self-talk comes right back up. So really, really critical that you have a set of rituals that you're consistent with, that no matter what's going on, no matter how the seasons are, no matter how the weather is in your life, so to speak, you are absolutely on target with, and you don't give yourself any latitude or any room to move from it. So if you tell yourself you're going to wake up at this time every day, it doesn't matter if you only got 4 hours of sleep that night. Obviously, I would hope you would get more than that, but you still push yourself to act on what you told yourself you were going to do. You have to build a certain level of trust in yourself, that when you do something, you actually keep your word, that you're consistent with it, that you're not going to be one of these people that says he or she's going to do something and you can't even trust yourself. And that's the trouble with breaking an agreement with yourself, is if you don't trust your own word, you're not going to be able to trust yourself to trust other people. And that creates a whole nother set of issues in interpersonal or intimate relationships, because trust issues all come back to one thing: an inability, or a lack of awareness would be a more accurate way of putting it, a lack of awareness about one's ability to trust him or herself. All of this comes back to trusting yourself, learning how to discipline yourself. In other words, set a target and continue to move toward it independent of circumstances, emotions, feelings, so on and so forth. And as you do that, as you're making progress, you feel better and better about yourself. You feel more and more confident, and it has nothing to do with the number. Obviously, weight loss or having a really great connection with your partner, those are all wonderful things, but those are dividends of the real work. What is the real work? Developing a good relationship with yourself. As you get to know yourself better, as you get to strengthen yourself inwardly, and you develop an awareness, a consciousness different than what you've had in the past, you're going to enter into everything you experience moving forward in an entirely new way. And because of that new attitude, that new philosophy, you're no longer likely going to experience the same outcomes that you have in the past, because you're doing things totally differently. Okay? So to recap, and I know I was planning on doing like a 5-minute video, and this has turned into something like 20, 25 minutes already. But this is something I'm really passionate about, because I'm quite privileged and blessed to have people from all over the world seeking my coaching, and I want to reach as many people as I possibly can. And I'm honored that you're watching tonight, and I believe that God intended for you to tune in right now, because there's something going on in your life that's troubling you. And perhaps I'm the voice that you hear that helps you get back on track, helps you realign with who you are, and tomorrow is a whole new start, a whole new set of habits that you're going to begin to be consistent with. And that's my hope, and that's my intention by creating this video. So to recap, the first 2 steps of this whole transformative process. Number 1, you need to make sure that you are very honest with yourself about where you are and why you're there, right? Not only where you are, that perhaps you're overweight, or perhaps you have a drug problem, or an alcohol problem, any number of issues that aren't bringing more of your potentiality forward. Anything that's getting in the way of that, okay, morally, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically, is something that you want to attend to. You have to decide whether or not it's something that is truly in the way. No one, a professional, no one can rob you of the dignity of choice that you have. And no matter how badly other people might want it for you, no one can change you, but you can change yourself. I can't change anyone, but I certainly can help a person who's willing and ready to do the work on themselves, to take themselves to places they once only dreamed of. But it comes from a willingness to actually address what needs to be addressed. What does it need to be addressed? Where you are. Don't see it horribly worse than it is, but see it as it is, okay? And then you got to be real with yourself, and you have to say to yourself, you know, you have to admit to yourself, almost to think of it religiously, it's almost kind of a confession with yourself. It's sitting in a room with yourself and admitting, my life isn't working. It's really not working. And if it works for you, if you're a person who believes in God or believes in a creator, maybe it's having a conversation with her or him and just admitting that. You're not asking something bigger than you to do for you what you can do for you. I don't think that's the way prayer works. I think that prayer is something we turn to, asking for the grace and strength to be able to do more for ourselves than we're currently manifesting, and often asking for something greater than ourselves to come into our life to do what we certainly cannot do for ourselves. I think that's what the religious piece of prayer would look like, is using prayer to be a tool of essentially connecting with yourself and connecting with that which you believe created you, on all levels. But I think it requires that you're willing to do what you can for yourself if it's going to prove to be effective. So admit to yourself where you are. Second, create a compelling vision for how you want your life to look given the predicament you find yourself in. So if you're in a place you're unhappy with physically, it would look like, I lose 100 pounds. I'm able to wear this size. My doctor is able to reduce or eliminate such and such medications. I've developed a consistent pattern of exercise that regardless of my schedule, I maintain. So you have to create some really, really compelling things for you that get you excited, that would make you feel proud a year from now, looking back on yourself, seeing that it was accomplished. And things that invigorate you, as I said, and invigorate the lives of those around you that are meaningful to you. So think about how much better life's going to be for your children. Think about how much life's going to be better professionally. Think about how much life is going to be better relationally. Think about how everything's going to get better as you get better. So you've got to motivate yourself. You don't want to be a person who's always turning to other people to do that, because what happens if those people don't show up, right? I mean, I can do so much, but you've got to learn how to install this in yourself. That's what this conversation is about, is how do you get yourself tapped into the power that you have? You know, one of the reasons that I decided to answer this vocation, and I do call what I do a vocation, it's second only to my marriage, is there wasn't someone out there filling this gap. You know, there were lots of people offering diets, lots of people offering personal training or exercise programs, but all that information, I think if that were enough, I wouldn't have had the problem I had. There was something that was missing, and that missing link was how to change my philosophy, how to change my attitude, how to change my mindset such that I could stay motivated in the face of incredible adversity, so I could close the gap between where I was, alone, sad, ready to give up on my life, no hope, desperate beyond compare. I mean, I was willing to try anything to free myself from the prison that was self-created. That was, I was using food like a drug addict uses drugs. And I wasn't even aware of it. That was the tragedy of the whole thing, is I was so reactive and I was so accustomed to putting the needs of everyone ahead of myself that I didn't even recognize. It was as if I woke up one day and here I was. So I don't know if perhaps you find yourself in that type of position right now. Maybe, as I said earlier, maybe it's not physical, maybe it's relational. Maybe you started off in a relationship and there was incredible passion and you and your spouse loved one another, you and your partner loved one another, and you were so excited to see each other every single day, right? And you couldn't wait to the weekend until you would spend time together, and nothing was wrong in the world when that was the way the relationship was. But as time has went on, things have kind of cooled off and perhaps you've kind of drifted. And tonight's a calling back to the way things were when you first fell in love with that partner. Perhaps tonight's a calling to the way things were when you first decided you were going to make life the way you wanted it to be. Maybe you are in a situation right now financially where you feel overwhelmed by debt, just buried by it. And tonight is an opportunity for you to see beyond your current situation and see that every storm that we go through does pass. Every season of winter, right now in St. Louis, we're in the season of winter, it will come to an end. The question is, are you beginning now to prepare for the next one? So just when you thought it was getting positive, a little bit more realism here, that there are always going to be storms, there are always going to be winters. You want to make certain that you've learned from what's happened and you're now beginning to make choices that are going to be investments into the future you're creating, as well as buffers against whatever has happened that has you feeling as stuck as you presently may be from ever happening again. Okay, and that's by having a map, a vision of where we're going that's exciting. So you don't want to be grim. You don't want to be down on yourself. You don't want to tell yourself only what you don't want. You want to tell yourself what you do want. And I'm of the firm opinion that we have enough experience, enough data to conclude that it's possible for you to do whatever you put your mind to if you're willing to continue to show up and deliver more than anyone else is in whatever regard, whatever the particular domain is that you're working to enhance in your life, whether it be your physical state, your health, whether it be your emotional health, your mental health, if you're working on something in that regard, your relationships, any of those things. If you're willing to show up and give as much as you can every single day and be exhaustive in that effort and not stop until you get the outcome that you're after, I have no doubt in your capacity to see things change. But it's going to require you step up. It's going to require that you remember the power you have within yourself. I mean, I'm sure right now you can think about things in your life that you thought you would never achieve, and yet here you are, right? I'm sure there's something you've done in your life that was incredibly overwhelming at some time. We can all think back to a time in our life where there was something we were encountering that we couldn't see beyond, and yet here you are, right? So why not remind yourself of all the things you've been through that you thought were impossibilities, yet you've proven to yourself you were able to move forward beyond. Why not take a step tonight and begin to trust yourself to just take the first step, to make the decision that you're no longer going to behave in the way you have been. You're no longer going to be making choices that are withdrawals from your future. You're going to keep this vision of how you want life to look in the next year, 3, 5, 10, in front of you at all times. You're going to be relentless and flexible, those two things, consistently in the face of everything that shows up, taking everything that shows up as a sign that you're growing, as an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself and about the journey. And as you're moving through this journey, investing that learning in the next thing that shows up. But you've got to have a very, very, very compelling vision. You've got to have something that excites you, that gets you up early, that keeps you up late at night. And you want to make sure you're with a peer group that is living life and playing the game of life at a higher level. As I said earlier, you don't want to be with people that are pulling you down or you're having to constantly lift up, because you will be drained. You have to have a steady stream of emotional replenishment constantly. And if you're always putting out, if you have people that are always kind of emotional vampires, and you're not clear on what's healthy in terms of having boundaries around you, you're going to find yourself at the end of every day resentful and bitter about what's going on rather than having excitement about the next day. We want to get to the point where every day you're waking up and you have anticipation about the day in front of you. And the way to do that, again, is having started with knowing and admitting where you are, having a clear vision of where you're going that you're constantly replaying in your mind. And I mean, make a practice of it. You have to ritualize it, because what did I say earlier? Why do New Year's resolutions not work? Because people don't have habits behind them to support them. So they have this great ideal, okay, this great image, but they don't have any pillars, any habits that are going to allow for that outcome to manifest itself. So if you want to close the gap between where you are and where you're going to be, you have to have a strategy. You have to have habits. You have to know the roadmap. And that's where coaching can come in. So if you're at a place right now where you feel stuck, and you feel like you've tried everything and nothing works, certainly I'll be glad to help you. You can go to my website, charlesdangelo.com, submit a consultation form. A member of my team will reach out. They'll get a bit more information about you. You do need to know anyone that you read about, watch, or listen to works directly with me one-on-one. So there isn't some group of young colleagues that have been trained by me that you'll be working with. If you're accepted as a client, you work with me one-on-one. So we'll talk about everything and decide whether or not it's an appropriate fit. If you don't have access, or you're not ready for that type of direct approach, that is sitting with a coach across the table and really working on issues and beginning to address the issues that are underlying the dissatisfaction that you're experiencing, so you can begin to be consistent and motivated in taking charge of your life and moving yourself from where you are to where you want to be. If that's a little bit overwhelming, first and foremost, I would suggest you've got to face that fear. And I'll tell you why. Because that which you don't attend to tends to get bigger. And so with fear, you've got to look it straight on, head on. And what we recognize about things that we're scared of is when we actually get closer to them and when we're willing to look them straight on, they're not nearly as big as we thought they were. But what we don't look at, what we look away from, tends to magnify itself in our mind's eye. So what I would encourage you to do is recognize you can't get rid of the fear that you have. I mean, that just is something that biologically wouldn't make any sense. I mean, you're an organism that has evolved over billions of years, right? So because of that, fear operates at a service to our survival. So we're not going to be able to override or eradicate that, but we can learn how to use it rather than it use us. And in the environment we're in now, for most of us living in the United States, there aren't the types of threats that the more primitive of our ancestors had to encounter. Yet, biologically, our brains, the amygdala, kind of the more primitive part of our brain, still reacts to things that we perceive as a threat with that same overwhelming reaction. So our hearts start to beat faster. We may start to perspire. We start to lose our ability to focus. We start to feel a certain drive to kind of flee the scene, right? The only way that you're going to be able to master those types of feelings is staying with the feeling rather than running from it. And that is incredibly difficult for some of us. I mean, to sit with that feeling of threat and not respond is not an easy thing for most of us to do. But it trains us every little step we take. If we can just stay with the feeling a little longer each time, it trains us to recognize that whatever we're perceiving is something that's a threat to our survival or is something that's threatening destruction of us in some way. It's really not. And when we start to train our brain that way, it starts to calm us down, and it starts to calm down our nervous system. So you don't want fear to cause you to move quickly towards something, nor do you want it to be allowed to paralyze you. You want to be able to kind of spiritually, consciously observe it, notice it. So the self-improvement, personal development lingo, they've kind of categorized it as mindfulness, right? Kind of being mindful of your feelings. And that's certainly fine if that works for you. I would say you want to be the observer of yourself. You want to kind of step back from yourself and notice what's going on within you, and ask yourself whether or not it really makes sense. So you want to be able to have that space. Unfortunately, because of the demands on most of us each day, we haven't set our lives up in such a way to allow for that type of consciousness. And that's why having a schedule, when a client works with me, we have a very clear schedule. So a person has a time they work out, they have times they eat, so on and so forth, where they don't have to give that conscious thought. If you look at any great leader, most of them have automated the things that are rather trivial in their life. So they don't give a lot of thought to, and I speak as a guy, to the outfits they wear. You might notice when you watch me on television, or you come and see me in my office, I tend to wear the same thing. I do own more clothing than that. You can ask my wife, but I tend to be really simple and kind of matter of fact about my apparel. Why? Because it's not that relevant to me. I really just don't care that much about that. I'm more focused on what's in front of me. So you want to automate the things in your life that you don't want to give too much cognitive energy to. And I don't mean to digress, but it all ties back into this fear issue, because when you're working on a real transformation, you're going to experience fear because you're moving into territory that perhaps is unfamiliar to you. For the first time ever, you might actually begin to be noticed by other people. I know when I was 360 pounds, I felt like no one noticed me. I mean, I was the archetype of a wallflower, right? If I was at a dance as a young man, I would be literally up against the wall. I think I avoided being seen. Why? My brain was anticipating incredible pain. Why would it be anticipating incredible pain? Well, as a kid, that's what I got, right? I was different. It so happened I was taller. I had interests unlike most of the young guys my age. And because of that, I experienced the pain, and my brain linked up connection or being seen or being there with another person equals pain. So I had to recognize that and had to actively work to reprogram myself. And you can do the same thing if you'll allow yourself to stay with the feeling rather than run from it, talk yourself out of it, or run to it, which is another thing. Fear sometimes will get us to run right into the thing, and that's just as unhealthy as running away from the thing. Excuse me. You want to stay with yourself. So you want to kind of notice how you're feeling, let yourself get grounded in yourself, and allow the feeling to kind of work itself through you. And as it does, you'll notice it's kind of like a little bit more has been installed in you, your capacity to handle fear. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it, just like anything else. Repetition's the mother of all skill. So that which you practice, you get better and better and better at. So keep that practice up. When you want to give up on yourself, stay with yourself just longer than you ever have before. And again, the more you begin that practice of self-love, I would call all this, all these items, things that would fall under the auspice of loving yourself. I mean, they're all things that we have to do if we want to be fully human. You've got to recognize that the only way you're going to grow is being in relationship with yourself and other people. So whether or not coaching might feel overwhelming, I can appreciate you also have your own timing. And so if it's too much for you to come and sit down face to face with someone, perhaps you just notice that about yourself, and you can get a book and begin to work on making some habit changes on your own. But the worst anyone's going to find out about any of us, I teach my clients this all the time, is that we're human. So many of us go through life in the shadows. We're afraid of people knowing us for who we really are. And the worst that anyone's ever going to discover about you is that you're human. You're no different than anyone else. You have fears, you have gifts, you have vulnerabilities, you have weaknesses, you have strengths, you have particular proclivities or interests. And the more that you get things out of the way that are keeping you from having a healthy level of intimacy with yourself, from being able to actually look at yourself and appreciate yourself, the more you can get those things out of the way, the more you're going to be able to bring into the world, which is, I think, what life's all about, is making a meaningful contribution with those things which you uniquely are gifted with. And there is no duplicate of you. No matter what anyone wants to try to do, no one can clone you. You are the only person with the unique set of gifts, attributes, traits that you have. You're the only person that has your living history. I have the privilege of coaching many people that are in their 7th, 8th, even 9th decade of life. And one of the existential issues we often have to discuss is the reality that they're the last living record of their life. And think about that for a minute. Think about no one knows your life like you do. As your contemporaries start to pass, and they pass on, they die, you're the last living testament to everything that's happened in your particular life. And so my encouragement is to make an investment in that life into other people. Take your life and deposit that into other people, as many people as you can. If you're so hung up on self-dissatisfaction, on not loving yourself, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to have tremendous regret. You're going to tell yourself, I should have done this, I could have done this, but I didn't. And I can speak from my own experience. I don't know that there's any more painful experience as human than having regret. I practice every single day at saying exactly what I mean in a loving, kind, respectful way to those in front of me, because we don't know how many more days we have. And again, I don't mean to be grim, but it's the truth. We don't know. And so I'd ask you to consider letting the people in your life that matter to you know that. I'd ask that you open yourself up to having compassion for yourself, for what you've been through, for practicing more acceptance for who you are, dispensing with the critical, harsh, mean-spirited, abusive, disrespectful messages that you picked up along your life journey, and having an attitude with yourself like you would with a dear friend. Having that much patience, that much appreciation, that much love, that much restraint with yourself, as you would with someone you care dearly for. And if you can practice that every day, I think you're going to find the level of the quality, would be the more appropriate word, the quality of your relationships is going to become magnificent, because you've become magnificent. You've become someone who is manifesting love, kindness, and acceptance of everyone you encounter. And I do want to make the distinction. It's not that you're being accepting of malevolent, evil, abusive behavior by any means. You're being accepting of the person who's capable of those things, because you know you're capable of those things. And there's a very big lesson in that. As you get to know all sides of yourself, you're much less quick to judgment, because you see that which is in your brother or your sister is also in you. And so you're aware that you have a capacity for doing incredibly, incredibly mean, perhaps even evil things, because you're human. And the work is becoming so conscious of who you are as a person that you're not reactive, as so many people are in today's society. Just the other day, I was driving down the interstate, and I came onto the road, and someone must have been going 90 miles an hour, and I came onto the road like at 45, and the guy swerved around me and stuck his finger out the car, gave me the finger, and started yelling. And I thought, my God, the level of insanity that most people are living with every day. You know, I mean, when you really stop and you're conscious, you're like, is it, how many of us actually call things out for what they really are? What are people doing? What is that about, right? I mean, why act that way? I'm sure he had a horrible day, but here's the sad part. He's so caught up in whatever his story is about his life, he's oblivious to the stories of others. And I think that leads to a lowering of human consciousness. The more people that are caught up in their own stories and are unaware, are unenlightened, so to speak, the more dark things we're going to see happen. I don't think we're ever going to extricate that, because I think it's a part of humanity. But I think we can work to take responsibility for our own lives and take responsibility as much as we can to do the most loving, kind, appropriate things for those in our own circle as possible, regardless of your religious belief or lack thereof. I think all of us can agree that the more each of us become responsible for ourselves, the better off the world will become, because we're all then more capable of contributing. And I think that's what we want to work toward. So it's been a really great experience for me being on Facebook Live here in my home office tonight. I hope you guys have enjoyed the last hour of a talk. I can't believe that it's been 55 minutes. If you have any questions, I'll stay online for a couple minutes here. I can see the live stream. Hey, Kevin, Kyle, Lori, Dave, Karen, Alina, Ron, Sophia, Mary, Asher, Bill, Tholi, Angie. Hey to all you guys, thanks for tuning in. If any of you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them. You need only type them in there on the right-hand column of your screen where it says write a comment, and I'll address them. Otherwise, if no one does, I will be signing off here in a minute and spend the rest of the evening with my wife. By the way, if any of you don't already have either of my books, I've written two. One is called Think and Grow Thin. The other is Inner Guru. Think and Grow Thin is more or less a guide through the weight loss transformation process, whereas Inner Guru is taking the principles of transformation that obviously one learns in the weight loss process and applying it to the other domains of life, relationships, finances, personal growth. Those things are all touched on in Inner Guru. Well, it looks like that about does it for tonight. So thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Pardon my voice, I've been talking quite a bit this week. Well, it looks like Kelly may have a question. Go ahead, Kelly, and finish your question before I sign off. Pardon my voice, I've been talking a lot this week. Kelly, I only see part of your question. What are my what? Well, Kelly, I'm not seeing you respond. You might have signed off. So if you are still here and watching, just send a private message to my page, and either myself or the team will respond to whatever your question is. Okay? Guys, God bless. Take care and good night. Thanks for tuning in.